Hello and welcome to the CYF course. Today we'll start a new series called Raising Workers. And first we want to say that children's worker is a real ministry. You know, the key for an effective ministry with kids is people. This is not the curriculums or the material or the rooms or the technical side, whether you have a sound system or not. If you have a heart, if you have real relationships, if you love them, if you pray for them, if you have compassion, if you are an example for them, if you are motivated and you can pass on this motivation to the young generation, this is the key. This is not so much whether you are gifted, you are talented, you are young or old. No, the key is your heart. Who you are speaks louder than what you teach. And the children will be impressed with who you are. Many of us will remember some of our teachers, sometimes for bad reasons, because they mocked us, they despised us. When we had a bad grade, they just said something that was very destructive. Or sometimes we remember some teachers because they believed in us and they made us able to work even harder because they were so motivated and we felt their heart. For this very reason, we cannot just take anybody in the children's ministry. We need to take people who have a real heart for them and for the Lord. For example, when we took over the responsibilities of children and teenagers in our church, we had a non-Christian mom who was teaching one of the groups, and that was okay. She was okay to come to church with her husband, but she was not interested in the service, in the worship, in the sermon, but she was okay to be with the children. What do you think about that? Or there was a rebellious teenager. He was an older teenager, maybe 18 or 19. He came to church once a month when he was his turn to take the group of teenagers. So, would we entrust anyone like that with teaching the adults in the church? Never. We only take people we are sure that they will say very good things to the adults and that they will have an impact on them. So why with the children we take any kind of person? Because we need other person? Because we are lacking workers? So we take anyone? No, it cannot be like that. You know, children's worker is a real ministry. We have a definition of ministry in Ephesians 4 verse 12. The ministry is here for the equipping of the saints for the work of ministry. So, children workers, if we apply that to children, they are here to equip the children, the younger saints, so they can minister. They can take their place in the body and serve and be part of the service. So this is what we should do. It's not just about teaching, passing on theories or stories, or doing activities, having fun. It's really equipping them so they can minister and they can take their place from a very young age. They need to give and they need to receive in order to grow healthily. People who only receive, they start to become fat. People who only give, they become exhausted. And we need to have this balance in the training of children. Actually, how do we call someone who works with kids? A teacher, a children's minister, a children's worker, a trainer, an instructor? No name is really fitting. A discipler? But if we take this definition of ministry in Ephesians, we have 5 ministries that are quoted here. There are apostles, and by the way, we need apostles. It's not about the 12 apostles from Jesus' time. Of course, nobody can measure up to these people. They are unique. But we still need the ministry of apostle until we grow up in the full stature of Christ and the unity of faith. So we still need them. Prophets, we still need them. Evangelists, pastors, teachers, we all need that. But why do we call a person who is organizing things with the adults an apostle, but when he does that with the children, he's just a worker, a teacher, an instructor? Why a person who brings the gospel to the adults is an evangelist, and when he does that with kids, he's just a worker? You understand what I mean? Because it's kids, we just put the children workers in one box. But we have many different kinds of children workers, and we need to call them by their names, by their gifts, so they can be released in their gifts. Children's worker is not a ministry we find in the Bible. Why? Because children were with their parents in church. We can see the story of Eutychus in Acts 20, you know, this teenager who was listening to Paul who talks the whole night, and he was sleeping in the window frame at the first floor, and at one point he fell to the ground in the street and he was killed, but Paul prayed for him and he was raised up, brought back to life again. But the teenager was here, he was part of the meeting. And the parents, they were responsible of the training of their kids. That was just normal. But today we have children workers. So first we need to give back to parents the first responsibility, and they need to be part of what we decide of the strategy to train the next generation, because they are the first responsible before God. But then we need to recognize fully the workers and call them with their real ministry. If we discern an apostolic ministry, train him as an apostle in the workers, so he can organize, he can put foundation, he can release people, he can exercise ministry. If you have someone in your workers who is a prophetic ministry, establish him, pray for him, bless him, train him as a prophet, so he can also train this aspect in the children. It is so important. Otherwise, we find here again this aspect of despising, and because you do that with the children, we do not recognize you fully. You know, many of us, we grew up in a mentality where we start our ministry with the children. And if we become good, we go with the youth. And if we become good, then we go with the adults. But we do not go back. Children is just a training ground when you do your mistakes and when you grow. But some people are called to be with children and to stay with children. I remember one pastor telling me, Guy, when will you do a Bible school and become a pastor? You really have these qualities. And now it's time to stop being with the children. I'm sorry, I'm called with the children. I'm called to be someone who ministers to the children. And I feel it's a privilege. It's not just a stage in order to push me further in the ladder of success, you know? So we need to have children workers who are really dedicated, and we'll speak about that in the third session. But, you know, we don't want just to rely on the workers. And this is very important. This is the responsibility of a whole generation to train up the next. And I'd like to send you a challenge. I'd like to encourage you in your community, in your church, in your ministry, in your base, that everyone in the base will be at least once a year involved with the children. Do something with the children, so you build up connections and the people take their part in the discipling of the next generation. So look at this diagram. This is to show that we can have different levels of involvement when we work with children. The first level is the children's leaders. They are totally involved in that. This is their main ministry, this is their passion, they organize things. This is the role we had with Joel when we were involved in our church to reorganize the children's part. Then you have children workers. They may be with the children once or twice a month or 1 month on every 4 months. And this is their main service in the church. But they are not the responsible for it. They enter in something that others have prepared or paved the way. And then you have occasional helpers, a parent, a worship leader, or anyone who comes once in a while to help and be with the children, maybe to bring a testimony or to help in some of the activities of the service for the children. Then you have resource persons. You may have, I said, a worship musicians, or you can have sound people who come and do a little training for children so they can help also in this aspect. Or we can have many people who are just resources. Some of them can be counselors also, who can come and at the end of a service with the children, can take them and pray with them for some specific things. You cannot do everything, and you need to identify people in the church who have specific gifts that you don't have, and that may bring these gifts in the children's ministry at some point to help, to serve, and to also reach out to the children in the church. You may have intercessors. You communicate to them prayer topics every week, every month, and they are committed to pray for the ministry of the children, for the growth of the children, for the families of the church. Many old people are very happy to be involved in this aspect and to stand in the gap for the younger ones in the church. And you can have mentors or coaches, counselors who are here for specific individual help when a child is going through some challenging time in school or in his family, if his parents got divorced. Someone who can meet with the child several times just to help him process and go through this difficult situation. You need to have different levels of involvement. It's not all or nothing. It's not you do everything, otherwise I don't take you. And this allows people to come occasionally to taste, see and taste. And if you are motivated, you can come more. So it helps every person in the community to come. I remember some of our pastors, when we were leaders in the church, they came once a year or twice a year to speak to the children. And that was so good for them to get to know the children a bit better, to see them in worship, to see how they respond to the word. That was so good. Now I'd like to put a few questions for you to discuss and share and pray together. And I really encourage you to seek the Lord when you do that. Don't just give your opinion, but really seek the Lord. And ask your questions to one another. You don't have to agree with everything I said, but share about it together and pray together. May the Lord bless you as you do this.